Thanks for coming out. This is our third year sharing information about divorce, and Heidi and Madison have been here all the last 2 years, so thank you for coming back. Janae actually helped us organize the first 2 years, and she's here in a completely different capacity as a provisional psychologist, so thanks for coming out and also saving the presentation and making it look presentable. I don't know how to do PowerPoint or Canva, any of it. So tonight we're going to do it a bit different than we've done in the past. If you've been on our website, if you've been on our YouTube, we have in the past just talked about divorce coaching, family law, money, and mental health. And this year we're going to try to go a little differently and talk about the 3 stages of divorce. So before or making the decision to leave or separate, and then during the process, and then after your new life. So that's what we're going to start with tonight. And Heidi is first. So Heidi's a divorce coach, certified divorce coach, co-parent. There's like 10 things that you're certified in. They're all pretty incredible. Her website's a real treasure, actually. It helped me a lot. So she's going to help us first. And then we're not recording anybody in the audience. So if you've looked on our YouTube before, we make sure to be really careful to protect everybody's privacy tonight. We're going to try to do a break around 8. We are also professionals, but this is not legal financial advice specific to your situation. It's just general terms tonight. There's Kleenex and a couple things in your bag if you need it, and a pen for your worksheets. And if you can move your phone to silent, that would be awesome. And if you want to take some notes, we're here for it. There's also some QR codes, so they're on the walls if you want to submit any questions, and there'll be some QR codes in the presentation as well. And then, what else? And there we are. So Heidi again, Madison, myself, and Janae. So we're all here to kind of bring you some information and hopefully make this a little bit of an easier process wherever you're at in the stage. So that's what we're talking about before, during, break, after, and then some Q&A. So we'll try not to keep you till midnight.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are we all supposed to cover before, during, and after? Like I'm going to cover before, during, and after and what I do, and then, okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make
That's
sure.
Okay.
So you're just doing before right now?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
we're all going through before.
Yes,
And then we're all going through during.
Yes.
And then we're,
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know.
got it.
I was doing this myself this year, so I'm a little bit behind. So
Me too.
I thought your stay or go stuff was pretty interesting.
Okay.
And I did put a couple slides in here for if you want
Okay.
it. So just push the down button. But I thought you had some really great resources.
and
for
even
people.
this is pink.
Oh, I know. Sorry.
Oops. Oh,
Kind of a
gosh,
thing.
What should I do? Okay. Okay. That's,
You want to push it down?
Yeah.
There you
this is better.
go. Sorry.
Okay. I'm Heidi. I am a certified divorce coach, as Crystal said, and I started my profession. I shifted my profession after going through my own very colorful divorce, I'll say, with 2 small children in tow. And one of the things that was most apparent is constantly feeling like I was looking for the support that I actually needed in the moment, and I couldn't find it. And obviously, my legal counsel was there to provide me counsel with the law, and I had a therapist that was there, as well as a financial planner, but who was there in those moments where I needed to really think about how my family was going to unfold, how I was doing, how my kids were doing, what was actually happening in real time in my family system. And also in that comes all of the emotion and anxiety and fears and anger and frustration. And when you're dealing with all of those emotions, to be able to think practically on your own is next to impossible. And I remember getting a nastygram from said ex and going into a complete anxiety spiral, calling a friend, and my friend was the one who said, you know, I love you. I don't know how to help you. I don't know what the answer is, but I want to support you. And so in that moment, I felt like friends and family can only go so far. They're there to support you for sure, but they're not there to give you advice. They're not there to think through things with you because they're looking at you through your own lens, right? And so in all of that, I started this practice, I guess 5-6 years ago now, to really be there I had a client the other day that said, you run with me on the track, and my lawyer and my therapist and my financial planner and my friends and family are water stops. And so that's really what I've set out to do, is to run with you on the track, make sure that you've got an objective thinking partner from 30,000 feet that also has expertise and experience. I don't think you could do this particular work without having been through it, because there's a lot of empathy and connection. I'm feeling really hot. Am I turning really red?
No.
Okay.
I did turn down the heat though.
No, it's not. It's not you.
plaid.
It's me. I'm 50 and it happens. I might have to strip. So sorry about that. And so that's why I'm here doing what I do. And so I support my clients to find their best possible path forward wherever they are on the divorce continuum. And so if we're talking about before, you're either in that moment of something's not right, something needs to change, this isn't it, I don't know what is, or this all just happened, I don't even know where to start, I'm in shock, I'm in survival mode, I have 2 little kids, how do I even move forward? And so I really do love it when clients come to me from that very first moment, whether it is something's not right in my marriage, something's not feeling good, or I'm just not happy, or, these kinds of things are unraveling, to, my marriage is ending and I don't know where to start. And so what we would do together is really identify and look at your whole world. So basically I do say I parachute into your world and take a look around with you as an objective thinking partner, and we kind of decide what the next right step is. Sometimes that might be having a shower. Sometimes that might be having a conversation with your children. We put the roadmap and plan together as to what that right next step is, short term and longer term. And whether that's having the conversation with your spouse, what that looks like, what you say, what you don't say. We talk about that. We talk about what happens afterwards. If it's talking to your kids, it's exactly that, what you say, what you don't say, and what happens afterwards and how you manage the aftershocks. It's all about managing your real life in that moment and making sure that you're able to move forward, knowing that you're going to be okay, knowing that you've assessed all the options of how things may go. And then in the before, we set the stage. If it's a situation where we think it's going to be high conflict, or it's a situation where we know you need protection, or it's a situation where you want to be informed, then we decide whether or not when to bring in other trusted advisors, which is legal counsel and beyond. And so there's room in the process for everyone, and I think it's just really helpful to have that thinking partner to decide, how am I ever going to move forward from this moment? And we do that together. And then what is this going to look like? How am I going to build from here? And like I said, the before, if you're in a place where you're very confused about where you're at and you don't know, and you've got feelings of guilt if you want to leave your marriage, or shame, or any of those things, we unpack all of that and talk about why things are the way they are, and help you through understanding that you can make your family system change in a way that works and everybody's okay afterwards. We can't predict what exes are going to do or spouses are going to do, but we can predict and assess and be prepared for all of the outcomes, and really just arm you to be prepared and ready for all that's going to come. And it is possible. And I think a lot of what we talk about in the before as well is the fact that you're not breaking your family. If you're at this point, there's already cracks in the foundation. And so how you reform those and fill those cracks might be in a different framework of your family, and that's okay. How you teach your kids that relationships change, and that's okay. So really wrapping your head around that piece of information and knowing that you can move forward and put the guilt and the shame aside. And if it's the flip side where all of a sudden your world has changed and you're shocked, again, how we navigate that to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward for yourself and your kids, and understanding that it's going to be okay. There is a way to do it, and there is a way through. So I think that's a good before of what I do.
I love that, because I actually, sometimes people will call and they'll ask, how do I make a plan to get out? And so I say, call Heidi, because you understand the legal, emotional, like the whole piece and how intertwined that decision is. So you're the best person, I think, to help people make a plan to exit when they don't know how to physically exit, emotionally exit.
Exit as a parent, and then also be prepared for when it is time to speak to your lawyer. You know, the first time I showed up in a lawyer's office, I was a shell of myself. I kind of walked in and paid the money and thought that she was going to solve all my problems. And she was very firm with me and was asking my instructions. And I was like, I thought you were going to tell me what I'm supposed to do. And so I really want to help legal counsels actually do their job and be able to stay in their lane and do it well. So clients also need to be set up to understand what the process looks like. And I'm not going to get into that, but I think the before as well is, okay, here's some choices of counsel. Here's what they're going to ask you. Here's how it's going to go. Here's the information we're going to share with them. Here's what we don't need to share, so that your lawyer can focus on what they need to focus on from the aspects of the law. So that's a big piece as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And you have a quiz too if you're deciding. That's up here if anyone wants that. We'll send it out after as well. So yeah, no, you do a lot of work in the beginning, so I appreciate that. If they call you in time.
Yes.
I didn't know about a Heidi when I was getting divorced. I didn't
either.
I mean, I'm not sure if there was a Heidi or any divorce coaches when I was getting divorced. And I remember the same feeling, just walking into the lawyer's office and being scared about the bill, and also really not sure. I couldn't answer anything either. So yeah, that's really tough.
Yeah, it's hard. And anyway, exactly that. And even just assembling the words to have a conversation that you need to have, whether it's about sharing the car, or who's going to have the kids, or who's buying the groceries, or what's happening next, or who's sleeping where. It's helpful to have someone help you do that without injecting the emotion and understanding. Anyway, that's
and sometimes knowing when to make that decision, or if you're ready to make the decision. Because I sometimes will get people in my office and they're asking questions and want answers to outcomes, and I realize they don't even know if they're ready to leave. And I'm happy to have that conversation and give that advice, but I can't tell you as a lawyer when it's time to leave your spouse.
Yeah.
That's, I step in after that point.
And I definitely don't tell you either. And sometimes I have to bite my tongue because I'm like, oh my God, you need to get out. But I can't do that. But I can help you prepare yourself for that moment, and also empathetically understand you may not be ready, and you may not be ready for a while, and that's okay. And there's no test, it is your pace. And we kind of close the gap on the when. I have clients that have been with me for 3 years that have just now taken the step, and we're not dragging it out. It just, they needed the reassurance, they needed the education, they needed the emotional support, and then they were ready. And so that's a huge part of it too. And I think having the ability to, and then I'll stop talking, I just came from a conference where they're reimagining the family justice system, and what they talked about is really shifting the focus to understand the family system prior to the legal process. And we've got it backwards right now. So when I'm working closely with lawyers, which I do, they either bring me in or their clients bring me in to be able to help them think through that lens of what's happening in their family while their lawyer's working on the process. And so that's what I think. I mean, I started out as a divorce coach. It's become a lot more than that, because I truly believe that you can shift a family system to health and healthy outcomes by doing it well. And so I don't know what you call yourself, but that's a divorce coach for now. And there are some divorce coaches out there that are doing lots of great work. Having the full scope is one thing that I just really wanted to specialize and make sure that I had. So the end of the before.
I think legally before too, people have, if you want to pass that to Madison.
Oh, yes.
My turn?
Yep.
Do I click down?
Yeah. Yes, down. Yep. It's my turn. Wow, apparently it's my turn. Apparently. Sorry. I was going to ask you some questions, but anyways, okay. People also will call. So like I said, they'll call and say, I don't know if I'm leaving. then I try to shift them emotionally first to make that decision. But sometimes they also are confused about the finances when they're leaving. And so my goal is to make sure that when a woman is making this decision, that she feels very financially organized and aware, and that she can deal with the next steps with confidence. That's really what I spend my time doing. We have some stats about women who work with advisors versus ones who don't, and the ones who do work with advisors during their process feel a lot better about what's happening during the process and their outcome at the end of their process. So with their money, because they understand it better. And sometimes they have more of the confidence to go back and ask the lawyer different questions or renegotiate. So that's important. We help you analyze all the things about your money that you are aware of. So we help you get it organized. It can be really simple. Sometimes in the before stage, we just start making a list together. Okay, what is your home worth if you have a home? How much do you have in savings? What kind of savings do you have? What are your incomes like in the house? What are the ages of any minor children? Do they have any special needs? Is there anything going on in the family that has extenuating circumstances? Because we need to know if there are certain government benefits that are going to be impacted as well. So we work on all of those things. We try to make sure that you understand the family's financial position as a unit before you try to divide it up. And we also, yes, these are the assets. I love your unicorns. I'm sorry. Thank you for putting these in here for me. Thank you so much. This made me almost cry. So people will avoid an advisor. They'll avoid a lawyer. They'll avoid a coach. Yes, professionals do have fees, but my goal, and I think a lot of us up here feel the same way, that our goal is that our fee will always bring you more than it cost you. And so if you think that you don't have access to financial advice because you don't have enough assets, please call us. If you think that you can't afford an advisor, we can talk about all the different ways that we're compensated. And luckily, my name's on the door, so sometimes I get to do things because I care, which is really nice. And Brianna will have to ask permission. I'm just kidding. But also, you know, it's still necessary, even if you think that your split is really amicable. It's really necessary to make sure that you actually get advice. Last year, the day before we were doing this event, I had a client come in to my office. He often came in without his wife, which is something I don't do a lot of, but it does happen. And he said, and I don't want my wife coming to your event next year or tomorrow, because we are going to get divorced and I don't want her to know what she's entitled to. And I was like, in my seat, like, okay. And I said, well, I'm really sorry if you misunderstand what the event is. You can go see it on YouTube. We don't sit around and bash the men. They're not invited because it needs to be a safe space, but we don't sit around and bash men. I want women to feel empowered and confident, and I want them to be able to negotiate the terms of the separation in a way that has them able to actually leave the relationship, because women tend to, more often than men, stay in a relationship because of money. And I want them to be able to get out.
Can I bring up just a
Please.
really good point, just really quick? Many women still don't have access to the family's finances.
Mm-hmm.
And if that is a situation that you are in, it's okay. Mm-hmm. And that's something that we also all deal with. And there is absolutely no shame in that. I see it every single day. And so if that is your situation, that's okay. That's why this team is here as well. Mm-hmm. And we help you figure that out too.
Yeah. So I explained to him that we are not here to make things harder or more expensive for him, and that Alberta has pretty straightforward legal process for the most part about money. And so that our goal is to understand both sides, have them able to split it up with costing less legally, costing less. And he left, and I thought I should fire him as a client. I did. I was like, whoa, I gotta get out of this somehow. It doesn't really align with my values at all. I would be really upset if my partner came into our advisor's office and said that. So 4 months later, they were both in my office asking how they split everything up. And that was a big win, I felt. And they didn't recognize that they had to look at their CPP credits. They were confused about a pension, and there was a lot of things. So we were able to kind of work through really simply in the boardroom, basically like with a pen and paper, which was kind of cool. So that was exciting. Yes, and so when you're preparing, I remember getting notice to disclose to my lawyer and feeling like I had no idea. I did not have access to our family's finances. I was more or less a stay-at-home mom, and I did not know how to do a disclosure. I had no idea what to write on the forms. It felt completely daunting. I didn't even want to go to the bank. Everything was joint when I was married, and it felt really terrible and scary. So we actually help people get their disclosures put together, put all their statements in one package, take that in, go in. It helps a lot. And so these are kind of the things in the list that you need. And yeah, I do have people check their credit. It's okay. Who cares what the number is? It doesn't mean anything about you as a person. If your credit has suffered during a separation, that can be quite normal. And so we just make sure that you're aware of it so that we can start rebuilding it together so that you can build your future. And these are all of the things that we talk about. This slide is messy on purpose. That's what it felt like in my brain when I got a disclosure notice. This is, just...
That's what it feels like for most people.
Feels bad. Yeah. And like insurance with a cash surrender value, people don't think of these things. Yeah. People think that business is, well, I built my business, I'm not going to share it with her. It doesn't work like that. It's okay. So when women need to feel like they don't need to feel like they know all of the answers before. You get to ask questions. You are in the right to ask for clarity, and you're allowed to have expectations. It is not wrong to have expectations that the process will be clear for you. So you get to ask questions. If you're getting pushback from the other side, it's okay. It doesn't make you a bad person. We want to make sure that you understand everything about your marriage before you decide to move on. And this is another checklist that we will share with you in an email. That's very long.
I swear I wear things other than black with white collars. That was not...
I was like, this is...
These are multiple years apart and different outfits. That's kind of embarrassing. All right, well, I have a look. That's the way it goes.
One time you wore a bright blue dress doing this. It's okay.
Oh, that purple
remember.
jacket.
I've done that this
The
year.
purple jacket.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay, so we're talking about the before, aren't we? Okay. So people come to see me for the first time at different varying stages of their separation. As I said before, some people come to see me before they've separated. They're sitting there going, should I separate? What does that look like? And I think it's an important time to have the conversation before you do separate, if that's something that's available to you, because it gives you an idea of what things you need to do to set yourself up for success in the start of a divorce process or a separation process. With that said, there's questions that can't be answered by your lawyer until you're in the process. And so sometimes I'll have people come into my office and say, well, can I keep the house? Or do I get spousal support? And I end up asking 10 questions in order to answer their one. And so in that introductory stage, it's an exchange of information between you and your lawyer, and you need to be comfortable with the person you're working with as a lawyer so that you feel safe in sharing that information, because we can only help you when we have all of the information available to us to help you navigate this process. I also think that at the time you're thinking about seeing a lawyer, seeing a divorce coach, seeing a financial advisor, you also should be talking to a mental health professional. This is a time where you're really, it's shaking up your life in such a significant way. And if you don't have someone who you can talk to who is trained to walk you through those emotions and walk you through those feelings, and also the responses you're getting from other people. Because when you start to tell people that you're separating, everyone has an opinion. When you ask your spouse to separate, they have an opinion. And to have someone who is trained to, sounding board might be is the incorrect term, but trained to hear what you have to say and hear what people are saying to you and help you navigate that, I think it's important, because otherwise you can often get lost in the noise of other people's opinions in the initial stage of a separation. And multiple opinions don't necessarily help you out. Working through your own feelings so you can establish your own opinions and establish your own identity in this evolving process of your separation and divorce is what I think is important in the initial stages.
I also put some questions in on the next slide and the one after, because what I find people are asking me a lot is, why do I need a lawyer? They want justification. And then sometimes I hear, I didn't lawyer up fast enough. Sorry.
So in Alberta, you often need a lawyer just so that you can understand what your legal entitlements are. I hesitate to say rights because people love to use the word rights, and it's really entitlements, obligations, responsibilities that you're really looking to understand. If you have any property, generally you need the assistance of a lawyer to help figure out the division of that property, but also to get some legal advice on what a judge would do if you were to go before a judge in dividing that property versus settling. And also the legislation requires any agreement that you enter into on property to be signed off by a lawyer. When do you need a lawyer? It really depends. I mean, I have clients who come in at that stage where I don't know what I have. I don't know what I'm doing. Do we have a mortgage? I don't know if we have a mortgage. I don't know what my husband makes. That sort of spiral. And then I have people coming in who say, my husband makes this, I make this, here's all our documents, we've agreed to this, draft it up. And that both are okay and both are very normal. And so I think it's important to get advice early, but the pace in which you pursue your separation and divorce and the financial matters that fall out of that really depends on when you're emotionally ready to take those steps. And I often say to my clients who are ready emotionally to take those steps and the other side is not, divorce moves at the rate of the slowest person in the room. So if you've got someone sitting across the table from you in a separation or divorce and they are not ready to make those decisions emotionally, you may be spinning your wheels for a while. And that just has to be part of the process sometimes.
Yeah, and picking a lawyer, vetting a lawyer. I know that we had some questions submitted before about like multiple lawyers. I had 2 lawyers during the process. My first lawyer gave me one of the best pieces of advice of my life that changed my life, but she wasn't the right lawyer for my divorce. She's a judge now, but the second lawyer was more because I had a slow pace ex. So it was like 4 years long.
Like pushing them along gently.
Let's get this over with. Yeah. So
yeah, I think picking a lawyer, I mean, some people go and talk to 2 or 3 lawyers before they pick one. Some people come in and say, okay, great, that works for me. I think that you're not going to like everything your lawyer says to you. And if your lawyer is telling you everything you want to hear, you may want to get another opinion. Because I think that people often come into an office with an idea of what they want, an idea of what's fair. And fair is a very subjective term. And, when someone says to me, well, I just want this to be fair. My next question is, what does fair mean to you? Because it probably means something very different to you than it does in the eyes of the law, than it does to your former spouse. And so you want someone who you can trust, someone who you work and communicate well with, because your relationship with your lawyer is most likely 1 to 3 years. It's not a short process. And that's even if you are working through it amicably and at a fairly steady pace, everything takes time. Calendars take time. Exchanging disclosure takes time. Getting into court takes a lot of time. Getting documents filed takes time at the courthouse. And so you need to have a relationship where you trust that person, but where you're able to receive feedback and information from them in a way that is constructive for both of you. And I've had clients where I've just said, we are not communicating well. Maybe this other person in my office will work better for you. Or, the same thing, I'll have an associate come to me and say, I can't communicate well with this client. Can you get on the phone and can we work through that? And I'm going, this person's so easy to talk to. And at the end of the day, it's just finding the right match.
Yeah. And then the next one's about some billing and stuff, because people don't really understand the process of hiring a lawyer, if they get free consults, how do you interview 3, and how do you pay your bill and keep control over your finances during that time? Because people, I think, are afraid that that's going to get out of control.
It's a good question. I think a valuable lawyer will often have touch point conversations with you about your legal fees and say, hey, this is how much the stage is going to cost. Yes, you might be entitled to another $20,000, but it might take you 13 to get there in legal fees. Are you prepared to take that step? But let's take a step back and talk about billing from a very basic perspective. Lawyers bill by the hour. And what that means is we bill a certain rate for each hour we spend on your file, but then that hour is broken down into 6-minute increments, and we bill for each of those 6-minute increments if we're not billing for the full hour. So for example, if you have a lawyer whose hourly rate is $100 an hour, I'm using that because it's easy math. And you talk to that lawyer for 0 to 6 minutes. That's what we call a 0.1. That's going to cost you $10. Then you go up from there, up to that full hour. And so it's important, if you send your lawyer an email and they respond and it takes, 0 to 6 minutes, again, that's a 0.1. So it's not taking $100, but it's taking a portion of that $100. And it's important to talk to your lawyer about their hourly rate, rates of other lawyers in their firm, and also how they manage their retainers. So certain lawyers charge by credit card each month, certain lawyers ask for a retainer and then draw it down each month. And different processes work well for different clients. And some lawyers have a standard practice and some lawyers are more willing to be flexible with clients on how they're doing their billing. But you should feel safe asking your lawyer questions about your bill, and your bill should be clear to you when you look at it. Sorry, I could hear you.
No. I was just going to add when you were done, also, the advice you're going to get is, oh, you know what, my friend got divorced and they had this lawyer, you've got to call them, or you've got to call. And a lot of what will save you energy, time, and money as well. I've never had a client that didn't save money in the long run by having, again, a thinking partner to say, okay, once we have a good picture of what's actually going on in your situation, I have 2 or 3 lawyers that I know and I trust and I understand their process and I understand how they work that I think would be a good fit. I think you should have a consult with them. I think this person would be a good fit. Some people are like, just sign me up with whoever, I don't care. Or some people want to see profiles and have that consult. And there are lawyers that practice very differently, and there's good fits for everyone. And I think Madison made a really good point that if communication isn't going well, it might be because it's just not a good fit. It might be because you may not be asking the right questions or giving the right information to your lawyer. That, again, is what I'm here to help you with, so that you can communicate what you need to communicate. And if the information you're receiving is hard to digest, process, we talk through that as well. But I think it's important to understand that your lawyer, the person you pick to hire, works for you. And so you are looking for someone that is going to work for you to advocate within the law for you. And they're part of your team, and it's really important to understand that you get to pick and know your neighbor, sister's cousin's friend down the street who had the bulldog lawyer who won them everything, not the right fit. We need to figure out what the fit is for you. So the research is really key to do. And even if you don't know what you're asking, we can figure it out. So, and part of the building efficiency into the billing in the process, you may call your lawyer and be like, I just have this really emotional time and I don't know what to do. And I've done that a million times. And, it's rather than doing that, you can do that with me, you can do that with your therapist, and then go, okay, from all of that, I need to figure out what the exchange day is for the kids, rather than like parenting. I don't want to share parenting. Like, I'm just using that example because it's really emotional, but instead of charging, all of a sudden you're going to be billed $100, we can zero in 10 minutes because I can let you feel that way and then say, okay, we're going to talk to your lawyer. There's the question. Go, right? And that's really important to understand that efficiency too.
Yeah. And I've met with people. I've had not many, but a few first meetings over the years where, kind of similar to that meeting you were having with your client, I'm sitting there and I'm going, I don't think this is going to be a good fit. I had one person come into my office a few years ago and tell me the situation. And I said, well, here's how it works. This is how you divide property, and you're going to be paying child support and spousal support. And he said, well, I was referred to your firm because of your firm has a really good reputation for, whatever else. And I said, yeah. And he said, so I was expecting a more creative outcome. Oh. And I said, well, there's creative solutions if you want to work towards negotiating something and, figuring out solutions that work for your family. But there's no creative solution to get out of child support. And he said, well, I don't like that answer. I said, well, I think maybe we should find, a different lawyer for you, because that's not how I would practice. And so, having those conversations and being upfront with that lawyer in that first meeting is important, I think, in figuring out who you're going to work with.
And I don't think anybody actually feels like they win in a divorce.
No.
I just haven't met anybody yet on either side of it that feels like they won. So
And even when you
It's
do win,
interesting.
when you get to that trial, you get to that final arbitration and you have success, oftentimes people say, I would have rather just sorted that out 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm. And it all isn't a fight. I think that's really important that, you know, it's not a divorce in Alberta is no fault. So it's not a fight. It's not a win or lose. Yeah, it's all awful to go through. Yes, it's a compromise. Yes, but if you can hire solutions-focused counsel and come to creative solutions despite the divorce that, I mean, according to the law, as it relates to property division and child support and spousal support and all of that. But if you come out of it and you know that you've done your best to be your version of fair, respectful, reasonable, that's the outcome that we all strive for. We don't want you to go to trial. We don't want you to go to court. We want to save that if it absolutely has to be necessary to be able to use court to get to the right solution for you. But the lawyers that I choose to work with are all solutions focused, and that's what we want for you.
Next slide.
Oh, this one's about wills.
Oh.
Should you update your will while you're separated?
I think you should update your will while you're in that process. It's a hard question to answer for me in a way because sometimes you don't want people to have to update their will twice in a short period of time. You know, by filing a statement of claim for divorce, which is a document that sort of tells the world that you are asking the court for a divorce and for things that fall under the category of divorce, like property division and spousal support and child support and parenting, that does help signal if you were to pass away in this process that there's something happening where all of your property wouldn't just go to your spouse. But if your will doesn't mirror what you want after you've separated, it is important to update it as quickly as possible, in my opinion.
Fair.
Yeah.
Choose.
Yeah, let people choose, but update your will when you separate is the conclusion there. Yes. If you don't have a will, go get a will, please.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends are starting to have kids, and I keep harping on them about getting wills.
Just make them do willfuls. Just have them over for a barbecue.
But they keep saying, they're like, why are you such a doomsday person? And I'm like, because I see it. Like,
just
No,
share
it's
the
true.
video with them from last year.
Yeah. So yes, update your will.
Yeah. And now you have a special.
Oh, yes.
Sorry.
Okay. So my job tonight is to actually get you guys a little bit involved kind of at the end of each segment. So before I even get into this topic of like why it would be valuable to have a psychologist before your divorce, we're going to go through 2 really, really brief exercises. So you don't actually need the paper for this part really, but if you're open to it, just go ahead and close your eyes or tune in and just notice right now kind of where you're at emotionally, the sensations in your body. And then from that place, notice 0 to 10, what's your distress level? 0 is like totally neutral, and 10 would be like super distressed. And you might be somewhere in the middle if these are hard topics, or you might be feeling pretty calm in a supportive environment. And just notice that. And then you can go ahead and open your eyes. And the next piece, which is kind of related but separate, is I'll take you through some box breathing. And if you've been to yoga before, it's possible that this is like not new to you. But in a moment, we'll breathe in for 4 counts through the nose, hold at the top for 4 counts, breathe out for 4 counts, and then hold at the bottom. And this is an exercise that I just do with all of my clients as a baseline, usually within the first 7 sessions, just so they've got this in their toolkit. And it can be really good proactively. Like, for example, it's probably going to feel real good for me before I do some public speaking. Or reactively, you get in your car after like a really, really tough conversation with your partner, and you need to just get that distress level maybe down from a 7 or a 5 to like a 2 before you go and pick up your kids. So first, we'll take a collective breath in and out together, just in through the nose and out through the mouth. And then we'll begin breathing in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold 4. You're welcome to keep going if it feels good. And then just notice your distress level now. You might notice just a slight shift, or even like it feels like you've got a little bit more space for your thoughts. And so we'll start to talk about why therapy might be valuable before a divorce. And at the clinic I work at, we talk a lot about the two minds. If you've ever done dialectical behavioral therapy before, DBT, this might remind you a little bit of the thinking mind, the emotion mind, and then the wise mind, where the two parts are kind of working together. And on the slide, you can see we've got the cognitive mind there, that one kind of with the glasses and the book. That's the part of your brain that's really good at thinking, goals, values, future orientation, and kind of feels like it's got it all figured out, or at least kind of figured out. And on the other side, we've got the walnut brain. You can see the little cartoon brain kind of crying. That's the part of your brain where limiting beliefs and emotions live. Heidi kind of alluded to maybe feelings like shame and guilt. And that's the part of your brain that gets really activated. Like those can be kind of like the fight, flight, fawn, freeze type things. And if you're into the neuroscience of it, cognitive is more like prefrontal cortex, and walnut is like amygdala or just limbic system in general. And so what I'm trying to do with clients is partially work with that cognitive mind and bring in some strategies and tools and figure out what's up, but largely actually calm down the walnut brain.
Dr. Joe does this.
I've seen that. Exactly. You know what? And what if I probably didn't have like a remote in my hand, be more like gestury? So most people are coming in to clarify their thoughts and feelings. And yeah, before your divorce, that's a great time to do that, really any life transition. And we start that in the first session, and that's more cognitive. We're like chatting it out. And then what that does is it allows us to start to understand patterns. And specifically at the clinic I work at, what we're doing is something called pattern theory. So we're identifying those limiting beliefs that are keeping you stuck and the dysfunctional needs that you develop kind of based on those limiting beliefs, as well as all of the thoughts and emotions and ineffective coping. And we're able to tackle kind of all of that, even though what you're probably coming in for is like, what should I do about my divorce? And part of the reason we're able to do that is because we're actually eliminating limiting beliefs. And so limiting beliefs are maybe some examples like I'm worthless, or I don't deserve happiness, or different things that might actually keep you stuck in the marriage, or maybe like running from the marriage, or maybe they get activated if it's not your choice to leave the marriage. And so from a process called reconditioning, we're taking these limiting beliefs that we've identified and doing a memory-based therapy that takes the charge out of those limiting beliefs and allows you to see things a lot more clearly, because that walnut brain is not getting so activated. And so that cognitive mind that knows your values, that would drive your decisions and your goals, is just that little bit clearer. And that does lead to some emotional regulation, but I also bring in some strategies. So that first image is actually a coaster that my childhood neighbor painted, but it is also my safe, calm place. It's a visualization activity that I do with most clients as well, kind of upfront, just to lay the foundation of some tools. That's the box breathing. Now you're familiar. There's also an app, and it's the screenshot from that. And then I don't do it with everyone, but that's the emotions wheel. And the reason I have that up there is in alignment with the idea of name it to tame it. So if you're able to name your emotions, bring a bunch of vocabulary to it, sometimes that helps you to understand your internal world a lot better. It helps you to communicate better, and it can actually just straight up take the edge off of that really tough emotion that comes up probably a lot before you're making a big decision. Then I work through communication skills. I'll just talk about the needs in relationship because we get to the rest in part 2. This is an activity that I love to do with clients. It's basically developing self-referenced statements about your needs in a relationship. Actually doesn't have to be a romantic one. And usually it's just super clarifying for people in general, but it does lead to better communication because if you don't actually know your needs, which a lot of people don't, it's really, really hard to communicate them. And it also can be helpful as you get further down the line, like in like a co-parenting situation, even though it may seem kind of like a weird situation to be like, yeah, I want to figure out my needs in this like relationship I am in. It is an upcoming relationship.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Needs in a relationship, do they change as we go through, like with a relationship, become a parent? Do those change, or are they pretty consistent with romantic relationships across the board, or even in all of our relationships? Like, are our needs kind of a foundation?
I think that new categories would develop in new life cycle stages, like having a child. But I mean, the first need that you'd establish in a relationship, if you were starting right up at the front, is like, do I want a partner that wants children or not? Because that's usually a pretty like black and white deal breaker type one. And then I think they do evolve because we learn from the relationships we've had. So if you've had a really positive relationship, you might actually develop new needs that you didn't know you had because you never knew you could have it, but now you absolutely couldn't live without it. Or on the flip side, if you've had a terrible relationship and something like really shook you, you might know that you can never have that in your life again in order for you to be healthy. And knowing either of those things, now you can kind of like vet things a lot more and also say it. And your partner doesn't actually have to meet your needs, which is hard to hear, but then you get to make choices about that. So you're putting the information out there once you have this. They're not even actually like demands when I do it with a client. And then in a healthy relationship where like both people are doing it, or maybe in like a relationship where people are like feeling challenged, but the divorce situation isn't final, then it's like, what do people do with those needs and go from there? But now they know them. Maybe you never had those conversations, and that's actually where things have gone sideways.
Mm-hmm.
Question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. When you're going through something like this, the last thing you potentially want is a relationship.
Exactly.
So I'm just curious on the needs of your relationship to yourself.
Yeah.
And how that kind of spins because you lose yourself so
Yeah.
much.
Exactly. So if you're in the before stage, it might be more about like figuring out the current relationship. And then if you're in the before stage too, and you're like not wanting a relationship or that relationship, then yeah, absolutely. So the way that exercise works is like the first part of the statement is I am blank. So I need, in theory, like a partner who is blank, but you could just as easily kind of be like, I am blank. So like I need myself to be this other thing. And so that I think would be actually like a very good act of self-care to like sit down and figure out like who you are at the core, and then how you can kind of step up and be those things for yourself. And on the flip side of that too, part of like what you need from yourself might be like the reaching out. So it's not just like I am blank, so I need to like do this for myself. Sometimes it is actually about being like, I'm a person who struggles to ask for help, so I need to just like start doing that would be the simple version. Because the statements can be like, I am X, so I need X, or they can be I am Y, so I need X. So it could be that you are something, so you need that in a person or in yourself, or it could be that you are something, so you need a little bit of the opposite to kind of balance you out. And then this last piece is values-aligned decisions. And so, I mean, that really touches on it. I mean, that's kind of like the perfect place to wrap it up. Doing something like those needs in relationships is going to call on you to like bring up those values and be able to make those decisions. And then the other pieces are like calming down that walnut brain is going to make it so much easier to be acting from a place of values instead of fears. And that last little thing at the bottom is representative of the choice point in acceptance and commitment therapy. And the idea of that is kind of, are you moving towards your values or away from your values? And you can use that in the context of some of your decision making. I'm going to skip this. This is just a review. If you've heard the terms like top down and bottom up, the top down is like all the skills and strategies. The bottom up is like the breath work and the reconditioning and those types of things. Oh, I think I actually accidentally skipped the reconditioning part a little bit, but that's fine. And then these questions and more are in your booklet, so I won't go over them too in depth, but the first three are, what are my values? What values do I move towards if I stay? And what values do I move towards if I leave? And so if you're in that like early stage, those might help your contemplation. What limiting beliefs are keeping me stuck? So even if we're not working through like reconditioning, that memory-based therapy, or working through pattern theory, that can be a really good exercise just to kind of figure out like why am I staying and where am I stuck here? And then checking with your nervous system and that needs in a relationship. Usually about 70% of the needs need to be met for it to be sustainable. So if you do it and you come out like a little lower, a little higher, that's not like your yes or no litmus test, but it's kind of a guide of whether things are workable.
Awesome. Everyone okay? Is it too hot? Okay. Just me and you then? Yeah. Yes, menopause. Okay, just kidding. No, it's me. It's me. We made a weird order tonight. Yep. We made it weird tonight. Sorry. I just shook it up just for fun because I know we have a couple repeats, so just wanted to make sure that they had new content to help them on their journey. Okay, so advice to help you navigate where you're at during your separation. So this is a time when you're usually making some pretty big decisions and you might be changing where you're living. You might be trying to decide what to do about your living situation. You might be trying to pay your bills to support the process, legal, mental health, all the pieces. You might need to understand your health insurance and what it covers and what it doesn't cover. And also, how do you protect things like the options that are coming towards you? So here in this stage, we can help start to make sense of all of the numbers for you. Decisions that come up in financial planning at this time are, do I rent or do I buy a home, right? Some people leave with enough assets where they have the option to buy a home and they don't know if that's the right decision because you've just left your relationship and you getting a lump sum of money to do this is actually a really big decision. And so we can actually put this into a financial plan for you and help you understand if this is going to benefit you and work you through the cash flow on either side because there's different considerations with those decisions. Lump sum versus payment. So this is the time when, with your legal team and all your finances on the table, we're starting to understand if you're going to get support payments or if you're getting a lump sum settlement and how that's going to unfold for you and how to apply that to your life. Sometimes you're given a series of options. Do you want payments for X amount of years at this rate, or do you want a lump sum in this manner? And helping you understand how the pros and cons of both of those decisions in your plan for your situation and your goals is very powerful. And also the question, will I ever be able to retire? Because this, like I said, nobody really feels like they win in this process. It feels really expensive because you're breaking one home into two. And so there are some expenses to consider.
Can I jump in there for a minute? Yeah. If you are buying a house before you've settled your property matters, talk to your lawyer first. Do not buy a house without talking to your lawyer. It can create a lot of problems for you.
Thank you.
And just tying the buying a house and support, your spousal support is part if you are entitled to and if you receive it. If it's received in a periodic way, it's something that banks will look at when they're considering whether you qualify for a mortgage. So when you're thinking, am I buying, am I renting, what's my income, that all ties together, and so it needs to all be talked about in that process.
Exactly, that's a very good point. So this is an example of a person who was trying to decide to buy a home or not and how to retire in the same process. So the top box that says 67%, that's not buying a home and starting to save some money for retirement. And the bottom box is starting to buy the house, but not saving for retirement, and we're still not meeting the goal that this person wanted for their retirement. And the side box is both. So we found a way to work through both for this person. And this is just, you get scenarios, so you get to choose. And we have Michelle with us today. Thank you for coming. She's a CFP that often will help with our caseload here. She's really excellent. Part of the way that we helped manage cash flow for this person is through RSP contributions, because they called us right when they were getting spousal, right at the end of RSP season. And we were like, you're going to owe an extra $7,000 or $8,000 in tax. Do you know that? No. Do you want to pay it? No. Okay. And we were able to do an RSP loan because the money was coming from trust at the lawyer. And so we got the RSP contribution done in time, saved the tax bill. Now this person has some investment money starting to grow in her retirement savings, and she didn't have to pay additional money in tax, because that wouldn't have felt very good. Over a period of 9 years, which is the spousal support period for this person, they're saving $33,000 in tax. And so that's important to know, because sometimes when you're getting a spousal support payment, your income is higher than it's going to be after. And so you're paying more tax in that period of time too. And so if we can help you grow everything for you and hit your goals, then that's the part that will change the game. So there's immediate relief. We were able to save that tax bill last year. And just go forward savings. We increased their retirement spending ability by $1,500 a month. And their net worth at retirement is increased by over $300,000. So this is, part of the reason I think it's really important to make sure you're updating these documents and involving other people in the plan.
Yeah. And on that, just touching on that, spousal support, when you receive it, is taxable to you in a periodic payment. So that's where that tax reduction really helps. I can't get over the outfit. That's killing me.
But you're so cute all the time.
It's embarrassing.
I know you wear different colors. I've seen you in public.
Okay. What are we saying up here? So people often say, well, what am I entitled to? And I say, well, what does your family's net worth look like? What are your assets? What are your debts? And so from a very, very basic standpoint, any property, so assets minus debts, your property that you acquire from the date of marriage till the date you settle your property is subject to an equal division under the legislation. And then there is property that if you come into the marriage with it, and so if you had that asset, that bank account with a certain dollar amount in it prior to getting married, if you can establish what the value of that was on the date of your marriage, you can seek an exemption in those funds and ask that that does not get divided. There's some complications if you've lived together prior to marriage, and there's some different tests that we apply there, but from a very basic standpoint, if you buy a house after you get married, and whether your name's on title or not, if you are married and you are acquiring equity in that house, that equity is equally divisible.
Businesses too.
Businesses, RSPs, pensions, anything else, cabins.
Yes.
Okay, shifting gears from money here. Okay, parenting.
There's other things in divorce, truly. Yeah.
So people often come into my office and say, well, I want sole custody. And I say, what does that mean to you? And first and foremost, we don't use the word custody anymore. The Divorce Act has changed. We use the words parenting time, decision-making, responsibility. But at the end of the day, parenting time is the time that your child or children spends living with you. And decision-making responsibility is separate and apart most of the time from the parenting. And what that is it's the bundle of responsibilities that you have to make decisions for your child. Does your child get vaccinated? Does your child go to summer camp? Does your child go to Catholic school or public school or private school? What are some other big ones on decision-making? I'm blanking.
Psychologist.
Braces, psychologist, medical care.
Psychoed evaluations, ADHD evaluations.
So all of those things, if we were to put them umbrella of medical, religion, education, travel, those are all your decision-making. And when you are married to someone and you have a child with them, you are deemed to have joint decision-making until a court orders otherwise, or until you get an agreement from your spouse that you have sole decision-making on those things. I, in my experience, find it to be quite rare for one person, if there are two active parents, to have sole decision-making on issues. Sometimes you'll have situations where I have a client who is a doctor, and these parties agreed that she would have decision-making over medical. And then I had another one where there was a teacher and they had decision-making over education, but the other decisions were still joint decisions. So sometimes people choose to parcel out one piece as their sole decision-making area. Overall, though, most people end up with joint decision-making unless they truly have a level of conflict with their spouse where they cannot resolve matters between them. And it's unfortunate when you're in that situation because at the end of the day, your decision gets made by a third party, whether that's a judge, whether that's an arbitrator. If you and your spouse cannot agree, then if you do not have that sole decision-making, a third party is going to say, yes, your child is getting vaccinated. No, your child is not going to summer camp. Your child is going to public school, not private school. So it's really important. When we talk about parenting time, as I said, that's the time that your children live with you or live with your former spouse or partner. And there's a million different arrangements out there when it comes to what a parenting schedule would look like. You can have, week on, week off, different variations of that depending on the ages of the child. The child can live mostly with one parent and see the other parent from time to time. It's really what works for your family. Child support. Okay. So
This is the government's website. I did put a link up. But
oh, I love that. Is that the calculator?
Yes.
Oh, I love that. Okay. So
yes.
Child support is one of the areas where there's not a lot of wiggle room for negotiation in most divorces. So what we look at is how much money do you make? How much money does your spouse make? What is the parenting arrangement? And then you take that information and you plug it into a software program and it spits out a dollar amount that is payable by you to your spouse or by your spouse to you each month, depending on what your parenting arrangement is. If you have primary care of your child or children, you will receive child support each month. If you are in shared parenting, then you pay child support to your former spouse and he or she pays child support back to you each month, and we call that paying on a set-off. If you're curious about what you would owe in child support or what you might receive, and you are an employee, you can go onto this website, plug in, I have 2 children, I live in Alberta, my income's $100,000, and it will tell you exactly that number. So
this one's kind of a more straightforward number than spousal.
Yeah.
Which
sometimes I just do it for fun. I don't even have kids. Just like, what does this cost me?
This is why you do what you do. And this one is the muddy one.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Spousal support is often what I see as one of the most contentious issues to resolve in a divorce because people have really big feelings about spousal support. Oftentimes, the person who is seeking spousal support feels like their former spouse is not acknowledging the labor they put into the relationship by not offering spousal support. It's also the area in family law that has the least amount of legislation when it comes to saying, if this, then that. Child support is quite straightforward. Property division is relatively straightforward. Spousal support has a lot more nuance to it in the analysis. There are really 2 major types of spousal support, compensatory and non-compensatory. If you have a prenuptial agreement, sometimes there's contractual spousal support, but we're going to focus on compensatory and non-compensatory. Compensatory is what you would think of as traditional spousal support. So I left university, I stayed home for 20 years, I had 3 kids. My doctor husband went out and made money and I kept our household going, I managed the finances, I did all that sort of stuff. Or I had a career as a doctor as well, but I left that career so that my husband could go to a fellowship in Vancouver, and then I started working part-time, and as a result of that, my income is a lot lower, but I also helped run the clinic that he operated, or something like that. In that situation, you're probably looking at a compensatory spousal support claim as the lower income earner. And that claim, the number of years you would receive spousal support and the amount you would receive are very dependent on the length of your marriage, your age at the time you have the relationship breakdown, and the incomes of each of the parties. And then layered on top of that would be, what is the parenting arrangement? And so child support and spousal support are tied together when you have children. And so that number would change based on what parenting time you have. And that's for both compensatory and non-compensatory. Non-compensatory spousal support is needs-based spousal support. So you may have not sacrificed anything, you may not have kids, you may have lived together and been married for 20 years. You just make a difference in income, or there's a difference in the incomes that is significant enough that when you leave that relationship, your lifestyle will be dramatically impacted. And in that situation, even if you worked throughout, didn't have kids, you may still be entitled to spousal support, simply based on the differential in your incomes or due to a health condition, for example, that would prevent you from working full-time.
Also, can you talk about imputing income?
Yeah.
Because that's really tough. I mean,
so when you have two T4 employees, so basically that means two people who work for other people and for businesses, it's very easy to determine incomes. However, when you have someone who is self-employed, works for a family business, works for a small corporation with his friends, or doesn't work and lives, for example, off trust funds or investments or things like that, oftentimes the income that they're reporting on their tax returns is not a true reflection of the income available to them for the purposes of paying child support or spousal support. And so in that situation, we do a more holistic analysis to look at what the income of the corporation might be, what their lifestyle is, what they could earn given their education and skills and previous job experience, in order to determine what sort of support, the quantum or the amount of support they should be paying, regardless of what their actual income that they're declaring to the Government of Canada is. So oftentimes people who are self-employed pay themselves as little as possible from their corporation because they want to avoid paying taxes. Great. Or support.
Yes.
So in a situation like that, what we would do is we take a look at the corporation's income. Corporations take expenses and write them off. And we'd say which of these expenses are legitimate for running that corporation and which of these is that person receiving a personal benefit for or just keeping money cycling through the company. And then we say, okay, he might declare an income of $35,000 or $40,000, but the income available to him is closer to $200,000. And then you would run an analysis on that.
What about the flip side of the receiver being the imputed income?
So for example, child support or spousal support. That does happen. So when you separate, even if you have been out of the workforce for a long time, there is one of the obligations under the Divorce Act is to work towards self-sufficiency. Self-sufficiency is a subjective term, and it doesn't mean I can keep an apartment and I can, I'm in a one-bedroom apartment, I can make all my payments, but I have no quality of life, or I went from traveling to Europe twice a year to not being able to afford to go to Banff. It's more about keeping you in a similar lifestyle to what you enjoyed during the marriage while recognizing that, generally speaking, when you go through a relationship breakdown and you take a whole bundle of money and you break it between two people, there is going to be an adjustment to the lifestyles of both parties. And so if you are someone who is the recipient of, for example, spousal support, and you are not in that category of I'm 60 and I've never worked and I don't have the ability to earn an income really at this point in my life, the courts are going to look and the legislation is going to look to you working towards increasing your income over time. And if you do not do that, then your spouse who is paying spousal support could make a similar argument to say you're intentionally underemployed and you should be working more. And that doesn't mean you have to go work more, but it means your support is going to be adjusted to assume that you could be earning more money.
And how can people take what the numbers that they're receiving and understand if they're reasonable in that situation?
What do you mean?
Well, I know that I have business owners who feel like they've been imputed at a higher number. And then people who didn't work or weren't really working feel like their support payments are really impacted really quickly.
So if you can't agree on what someone's what we call guideline income is, generally, depending on the resources of the parties, you'll be looking at getting what's called a guideline income report done. So that's hiring a third-party business valuator or someone who can do an analysis of the funds available through the business in order to determine the income.
Okay.
That answer that question?
Yeah, I mean, it's complicated. It's hard to be told on either side pay more or receive less. I think it's a really hard conversation, and it's not a black and white answer, even though your outfit's so awesome. Just joking, sorry. I had to slide that in there. Sorry. Yeah.
Just on that note there, how often is that evaluated, that income, as opposed to a T4 employee, which is every year you're supposed to share your
Oh, good question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How often is that? Because the imputed sounds like it's more complicated, it's more expensive to get reviewed.
It is. So usually what I do in my practice, and lawyers will do different things, and this is where mediation or negotiation can be really helpful, is you'll either put a formula in place. So if, for example, someone has a relatively straightforward business and they have a few expenses, you sort of say, okay, each year we'll agree that this amount gets added back into what you're paying yourself, or your income for the next 3 years will be this amount, and we'll review it at that point if something significantly changes in the business. Sometimes certain people who have a more complicated business will have a business valuator who will create the formula for them rather than having lawyers do it. And then sometimes parties will agree on a number that works for a period of time and agree that there'll be a review after a certain date, and they won't do an analysis each year.
So it's nothing based on them actually filing their corporate taxes or their sole proprietor taxes. It has to do with this separate agreement.
They would still be obligated most likely to disclose each year, but you may agree that rather than disclosing and trying to recalculate each year and re-engaging lawyers, the two parties can find a formula with the assistance of their lawyers that they can apply without their lawyers. So that's one way of doing it if you're able to negotiate something like that.
And that's applying to the court, or is there?
That would be in the situation where you have a separation agreement, and that separation agreement would set out the child support for a period of time. It would generally say each of the parties would exchange financial disclosure. Usually that's done after tax season, so sort of June of each year. And then it would say, you know, if Bob's income falls below $120,000, the parties will reevaluate what the support numbers are or something like that. It's when parties have corporations and more complicated incomes, it becomes more of an art than a science because it is subjective. Like, what is the benefit that I derive by driving a company vehicle? Well, my ex-wife says it's 100% of it's all personal, and I actually think that I use that truck a lot for work. Yeah.
So my question is, well, when the person receiving the spousal support has a disability and cannot work because of the disability, then what kind of compensatory awards would arise out of that? And what about the non-compensatory? Because that is the one that they would not be able to actually fully define, right?
Yes. So your question, if I'm understanding correctly, is how do we reach the number, right? Is that the question? So what is that number? So in order to determine what the dollar amount you would receive in spousal support would be each month, we'd need to look at how long you were together, what each of the budgets of each of the parties are, especially when we're looking at someone with a medical need that prevents them from working full time, and any other resources available to them. So any sort of AISH or things like that. Does that help answer it? The long and short answer is this is where you'd need to actually have numbers to run the formulas and run the calculations. I can't sort of say if your spouse's income is $100,000 and your income's $50,000, spousal support would be blank. That's not something that I could do without looking at what are your ages, how long have you been together, what are the resources available to you outside of incomes. For example, do you have investments that can drive extra income and things like that?
By investments, you mean personal investments or joint investments?
So when you're looking at a property and support settlement, you settle the property before you finalize the spousal support, so we know what assets are available to each of the parties, and that's when you would do the final spousal support analysis. They're done at the same time, but property is done first and then spousal support.
Get you. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, the disability piece does actually make it really confusing.
Mm-hmm.
Make it harder to feel good about the numbers sometimes, I think.
And it's hard. Sometimes you get there and you're running it and both parties need more than there is to go around. Like that doesn't happen, or that does happen, and it's hard when that happens. I have the clicker.
Yes. Oh, yeah. The collaboration that you guys do together during that time.
Okay.
You want to talk about our collaboration?
Sure.
Yes, because it's important.
It is so important, and I think I've touched on it. I mean, really, it's really important to understand that when you're going through this, it is absolutely. There's so much you're managing, and I'll get into that when we do the during. But it's important to understand that your lawyer is there to advocate for the law and help you with the legal process. Your divorce coach, your therapist, they're there to help you with the emotions and the real-time life changes that are happening in the process. And when the two come together and tag team, which is what Madison and I often do with clients and other, we understand each other's roles, and we understand where a client, Madison will say to a client, that's something you should take to Heidi, and vice versa. That is a question for your lawyer. I don't give legal advice. Let's make that list together. And then even in situations, we'll find ourselves meeting with clients together. So I'm there to sort of help them feel like they've got their voice of reason. Even if they get into the emotions of it, they know that there's someone there at 30,000 feet that's going to make sure they're asking the right questions.
And giving the right information.
And giving the right information for Madison or the lawyer to do their job. And if the client needs to take if they need a moment to get through something, or if we need to get them back on track, that's my role. And also to make sure that Madison's getting the information that she needs and requires, and vice versa. If someone's coming to her with a bucket load of emotions, which is very normal, Madison can say, I am very compassionately on your side and I want to help you, but this needs to go to Heidi so that you can unpack all of that and make sure that you're making good decisions. And so we work well together and a lot together with clients who want both of us as professionals at the table. And it's beneficial for us as professionals, and it's mostly beneficial for clients. You can't make your lawyer be an armchair psychologist, and I can't be a lawyer. And so it's really helpful. And all in all, in the end, sometimes people are like, oh my God, so many professionals, fees, but it does save you money in the long run because it builds an incredible efficiency into the process for you. And we know together what needs to be thought about, needs to be asked, needs to be processed, needs to be decided. And so we're holding you from both sides, so to speak.
Important.
Yeah. And then obviously the other professionals that come into play when that's important. I mean, you have a team, and it's kind of daunting when you're starting out thinking, oh God, I got to hire a team. What is that about? It's critical because those professionals bring to the table what they are professional in around your life choices. And, when we talk about the juring, I'll get into, from a mental health perspective as well, there are lots of opportunities that I'm like, that is, what, do you have a therapist? I think we need to take that to your therapist and unpack that. And the way that I look at teaming with a therapist is also, your therapist is helping you with all of processing and uncovering and understanding all of those feelings and all of those emotions. And maybe those feelings about being less of yourself and what needs to happen. I'm here to help you bring all that back together again and help you move forward with that line of sight. And so that is another really important collaboration between mental health therapists and your coach, backwards and forwards and all together so that you can move forwards.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
I know. That's from last year. The things that the courts consider. We can just send this out in the email. It's no problem. But it's just...
Oh, that's on spousal support.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's really like, basically, hopefully you don't end up in court. That's the goal, right? Normally.
Very much.
Yeah. Hopefully we don't end up in court. But we still need to consider what's appropriate and what's needed.
And on the collaboration piece, I was just thinking about going back to what you were saying, where you sit down and talk to people. So on support, for example, there's always a range, right? There's never one number. And my job is to say, that's within the range, that's reasonable. I'm not a financial person. I can't say, that's enough to also get you to retirement.
Right.
That's, somewhere where Crystal would step in.
We try to get you there. We have a really exciting one later. So these are also the questions that we get a lot about is mediation, arbitration, pressure to sign documents. I was wondering if both of you could touch on that because I find those conversations really hard in the moment, and I am not the right person to answer these questions because those are very long meetings. I don't know. Mediation is a really tricky topic. I feel like it's necessary in Alberta right now, but I'll let you speak to that.
It's required you're required to attempt alternative dispute resolution before you go to court. So from that perspective, it is a step that you need to take. I'm a really big fan of mediation and arbitration. Most of my files settle in mediation because it's a forum where parties are able to ask questions, get answers, and collaborate in finding a solution with the support of their lawyers. And so what mediation is, just quickly in case you have never heard of it, is it's a process where there's a third party assisting two people who are in a dispute find a favorable outcome or an outcome that they can live with. And so the mediator's role is to hear both sides in what their goals are and to help them reach those goals while resolving their dispute. Arbitration is effectively a private court process where you hire, generally in my line of work, a senior family law lawyer who will put on a judge's hat effectively and act as your decision maker if you and your spouse cannot settle things through negotiation or through mediation and you choose not to go to court. In order to go to mediation and arbitration, it needs to be a mutual decision between the two parties, and you need to find the right mediator arbitrator to work with you who you feel safe having that person make decisions for you if you're unable to reach a decision.
And you both have lists of mediators, correct?
Yes, and I would say, even just backing up a little bit, I'm sure this is like, okay, what process, what's happening? And so again, all of this is daunting, whether it's the emotions and your family. So if we're going through during the process, you've got yourself to figure out, you've got your kids to figure out, and your family to figure out. You've got the new normal to figure out. You've got your spouse might not be the easiest person to be around. It might not be, we're talking in very general terms. You might be dealing with addiction. You might be dealing with mental health disorders, personality disorders, high conflict people. All of that is daunting. And then you've got to get into the process and understanding the process. And so and then you've got to figure out your finances. And so all of that together is really, really overwhelming. And I often will say to clients, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And so we break things down to really bite-sized, manageable chunks together. And that's a big part of my role. So when you're seeing these big words like compensatory and mediation and arbitration and all of these things, it will be part of our journey, is explaining how this all works. And that's what Madison does as well. We explain to you what needs to happen. And so I'll have people, and I know you will too, I'll have people come to me and say, well, should we just hire a mediator? And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. The mediator, and explaining what a mediator's role is, understanding that you want a qualified mediator, not just someone who's hanging a shingle out, which unfortunately anyone can be a mediator. And so in all of this, to understand the process, you're going to look at this, and that's, again, what I'm here to help you with, is looking at it from 30,000 feet and understanding what's ahead. And so in Alberta, yes, you have to try and attempt alternative dispute resolution, which is mediation, arbitration. It depends on what is happening on your file. So you've got parenting, you've got your property and asset and debt division, and you've got your support. Those are kind of your three areas that you're going to work with Madison to really uncover how it's going to go. From a parenting perspective, I work really closely with my clients to understand what parenting time and parenting decision making looks like for the best interest of your child. You're going to hear best interest, well-being. That's not in the best interest. That's not in the well-being. Where we come from is a place of truly, again, I come into your world and I take a look around and understand what age your children are, what stage they're at, what they're like, who they're attached to, what their relationships with both parents are. And then we decide together what the most appropriate parenting arrangement for your parenting plan would look like for you to propose, to give to your lawyer and say, this is what I think is going to be the best for our family, right? And that's what we really want to want to focus on is what is in the best interest of your kids and your family. And it gets caught up in, oh, all of a sudden someone's having to pay child support, so all of a sudden they want to be super parent and they don't even know where their kids go to school. And so all of that we can talk through as well as to how that looks for you. And then when you go into mediation, you're going in prepared. Your lawyer's going to prepare you. I'm going to prepare you to know that you don't just walk in and the mediator makes your decisions. Not at all. They are qualified mediators who are typically lawyers and also arbitrators. They understand, they guide to the right solution, not just a solution. So like shingle hanging third-party mediator will just want you to agree. And so you don't want to go somewhere where they're just going to sit back and wait for you to come up with your own resolutions, because you're going to be sitting there and spending a lot of money. You're going to mediation with your lawyer. I attend sometimes to get in front of a qualified mediator that can help guide you to the right solution based on the information presented, okay? And so that's really important to understand, that you're hand-holded throughout. You don't have to go home and decide, oh God, who are the mediators I need to look for? Not at all. It's understanding that it's all part of the process. And that's what coaching does, your lawyer does. You can talk through with your therapist. I know you get tons of questions like that where we go ask, whomever, but it's important to understand that there is a guided process. There is a way and through the process, and you're not having to decide or guess or understand. And so if you're in a situation where you're separated or you're facing it and your spouse is saying, well, let's just go see a mediator and we'll work it out, run for the hills and honestly come to someone who is qualified so that you can ask questions, because 9 times out of 10 in that situation as well, they're doing that so that they can control the outcome. And we want to make sure that you are represented fairly, reasonably, and respectfully so that you're getting what you're entitled to, not so your rights but what you're entitled to in divorce. So that's a lot of the juring. And so these are huge, scary words. And I just want to make sure that everyone understands that that will be part of the guiding you in the right place.
And I feel like if you go into mediation with some preparation, you're not going to feel shocked by the outcome. You're not going to feel like you can't make a decision, like you've been wronged. You're going to be really aware of what your expectations are.
Exactly. I was in a mediation preparation meeting with a client and their lawyer yesterday morning, and my client was surprised at how it went because we didn't have all the information from her former spouse. She thought it was going to be all financial. Well, we're going and talking about parenting and some boundaries and rules around their parenting plan that is in their well-being and best interest of their kids, because there's big transfers coming out of the bank account that he hasn't accounted for. So obviously we're not going to talk about that. We're going to ask him to provide more disclosure and complete his disclosure. So again, and my client was really surprised. She was actually really scared because she thought she was going into mediation with what he had presented. So obviously that's not going to happen either. We're going to make sure that you have all the information to be able to negotiate and settle the right outcome for you and your family. And I'm sure you see that all the time.
Sorry?
What happens if you want to pause the mediation because disclosure isn't helping and the mediator says, whoa, you should have asked that before today? Crappy mediator. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to say anything. That's a tough one. I think that you have a right to ask
But they're
for
an
more time.
arbitrator too, so you can't do anything.
Well, you can, because your arbitrator is never going to make a decision in the middle of a mediation. Like mediation and arbitration are two, and this is kind of a niche
really
point,
important.
but are two completely separate processes. And I often still say to my clients before I go to a first mediation, if you don't agree, you can leave. If we don't reach a deal, the person who is acting as your mediator arbitrator can't suddenly change hats at the end of the day and say, okay, well, Bobby's living with mom. Like, that doesn't happen. If you can't settle in a mediation setting, everyone packs up, goes home, your lawyers have a call with the arbitrator, they set a process, evidence gets put before the arbitrator, and a decision gets made. It would be wholly inappropriate for an arbitrator to make decisions in a mediation.
Is there a process if you feel like it's gone wrong? Or are you locked in?
So it depends. So
I'm sorry.
That's loaded,
That's a big question.
but it's important.
yeah,
It's
so
important.
certain arbitration decisions can be appealed depending on the contract that you entered into. I think that's,
Yeah.
it's pretty niche.
But it's not like closed forever.
Depends on the contract. Sometimes people sign arbitration agreements that say there's no rights of appeal.
Oh.
Sometimes there are rights of appeal.
Okay.
And the law guides, and you are not in a mediation, and you are not, I've got, when clients don't understand, they're practicing for mediation, and I remind them that the mediator does not make the decision. You do. You don't have to agree to something you don't want to agree to. You can end it. You can take a break. You can do all those things. And a good mediator will guide things. I've seen mediators push people, and they're going to push people when they see that they can be pushed into a gap to make the right, but they're not making the decision, and they're not guilting you into anything. They are there completely neutrally to help you come to the right agreement. So it's really important. And that's why qualified, good mediators, not third party, hang a shingle out, Mediations R Us, divorce.com, run for the hills. Because you're not going to come out with an outcome. And usually if you come out with an agreement like that, Madison has to redo the whole thing. So
That's probably not cheap. Okay. So we have some questions that have been already submitted, but if you have any more questions you want to submit, but I appreciate the questions that have already been asked, you can submit some more if you would like to. And if you want to grab something to drink, or I'm sorry about the cheese. Like all I can smell is cheese today. But it's good cheese, but yeah. So grab something to eat. We'll take like 5 or 10 minutes. The washroom is in the hallway if you need to take a breather. If you do go outside the door, we'll lock. And I think we have a number on the outside of the door, but don't, yeah, okay. Make sure we don't
Outside
lose
the door of
anybody.
the building, not the bathroom.
That's right.
Yeah.
The bathroom's fine. Yes. Yeah. So we'll take 5.